Hi everyone. Let's start and hope that more people will join us later. Welcome to the 5th episode of the Working Software series. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to collect requirements so that you can already see the implementation as you do that, and all that to avoid roadblocks and surprises later. That is the topic for today's presentation, and this is the only slide I prepared for you. There will be 2 demonstrations here, and I'm not really going to write any code, despite what the title says, how to write code. The end of the title is more important. Without a computer, I will write code in my head only. I will just imagine what a code will look like, and I will do that while planning the implementation. And as the result, I will be certain that that when the time comes to actually sit by the keyboard and write code, that will work. I will be able to really implement all the features that I have promised. So, this is the application which I will show you later. The first demonstration is meant to prepare you for what is about to come. I want to show you the principal idea behind this way of planning features, and then we will apply that thinking to a bit more complicated example where there will be many user stories and many features that will be developed later. So, the principal example. The customer comes and says, we need a feature. I will show you an implementation of the Euclides's algorithm for calculating greatest common divisor, GCD, because it is a very simple example to demonstrate. So the customer comes and says, implement GCD in whatever area of the application that is needed. And so you think, okay, I know how to implement GCD. But the problem is that when a customer is specifying the requirements, you as a developer will probably not be there. They will put requirements into some software, and you, developer, will see it later when supposedly some of the managers, maybe product owner, presents that to you. You will analyze the user stories, give your feedback, whether those can be implemented or not, what are the whether they should be broken down into multiple features, whether there are requirements, prerequisites that will enable that user story implementation. And when everything is over, that user story will eventually pop to the beginning of the queue, and it will become a candidate for the next sprint, and you will ultimately take it into execution. You will implement code behind that user story, and that's about the lifetime of a request. However, how do you know that once you really take that request into execution, that you will be able to write code which satisfies that? How will you be certain that there will be no surprises that will prevent you from completing a user story within current sprint as you promised? It's very easy. If you can see the implementation, if you can construct it in your head, in your mind, then it will be all right. There will be no surprises. If there are gray areas where you're not certain what lays ahead, what you're going to develop, then you might be surprised, and you might be stopped from completing what you have promised to complete. So, implementing the GCD, that is the current requirement. How do you implement it? That will be the function of two numbers, A and B. And what do? You know, you can find prime numbers that divide both of them, collect them on one side, and multiply all of them. But that algorithm is not efficient. So we are already thinking about implementation. And while I am writing code on the screen, you should think that I'm actually writing code mentally, not on any screen. I'm just trying to imagine what would the implementation look like. And then we talk about this requirement and somebody says, oh, there's that Euclidean algorithm. You know, there's a simple theorem which was proven 2,000 years ago, which says that GCD of A and B is the same as GCD of A minus B and B for A greater than B. It's easy to prove, because if we say that A is P times some K, where K is the GCD, and B is Q times K, so they obviously have the same component K, then A minus B is P minus Q times K. So it also has the same GCD. It has the same component. So we can reduce the size of the larger number, and now the problem of calculating GCD will be reduced to calculating GCDs of smaller numbers. Of course, if A is 1 million, like this, and B is only 1, then we will have to subtract those 999,999 times, which is very inefficient. So there is a corollary to Euclidean algorithm, which says that you can keep subtracting so long as A is greater, the first component is greater than the second one, and stop when that is not true anymore. And if you say so, then it looks like this is equal to GCD of A modulo B and B. And now we're talking about something very efficient, because modulo operation will converge very quickly. It will definitely be smaller than B, so I will actually revert these arguments, and now we have the first component B being the larger one and the second one being the smaller one. And when do we stop? We stop when we reach K, and that will produce modulo 0, because both will be reduced to K. So we end up until we are asked to calculate GCD of K and 0. When the smaller component is 0, we have calculated the GCD. So we have the algorithm. It took some 5 minutes to explain. I explained this algorithm just for the case that you never completed secondary school, because I think that all of you have learned this algorithm over there. So we know the algorithm. This goes into the user story. Okay, so this is the user story part. Maybe the customer and product owner didn't write it down, but you should write it down, because whether you or some other developer takes this user story into execution, they will need the explanation what is supposed to be implemented. And now we have a user story which says pretty much everything. And you think, okay, how am I going to implement this? And then you imagine code. You have been coding for years, so it shouldn't be hard for you to say that if A or if B is greater than A, then we should switch these two arguments, because we need the first component to be the larger one. So we say int temporary is A is the boring part starts, B is temp. I have switched order of these two. Do you need to see this code to imagine it? Of course not. You just say, okay, if B is greater than A, I will replace them. That's all. Then, what happens then? Okay, while B is greater than 0, I do what? I will say that temporary is A modulo B, A becomes B, and B becomes modulo. And I repeat that in the loop while the smaller component becomes 0. And then I return what? B. Whatever, no, A, the larger one. B is already 0. And so this is the implementation. Again, do you need screen? Do you need computer for this? I hope not. Because you can simply say, I will switch order of these two. If it is reversed, I will loop while the smaller component drops to 0. I will take modulo operation and keep going, and when everything is over, I will simply return the larger component, which is non-zero. And that will be the GCD. And there is even better idea. This is procedural implementation, you know. And you may guess I don't like it. If you are inclined to functional programming, GCD of int A, int B is what? If B is greater than A, then it is GCD of BA. Reverse their order. Otherwise, if B is 0, then it is A. Otherwise, it is GCD of B, A modulo B. Done. So this is even better. If you could think of this implementation while you are reading that, so can you connect these two with each other? Let me cut this and put it here. So this is the user story, and this is the code behind it. Do you need this code to think about this user story? Again, I hope not. Because this code is one by one related to the user story. A is greater than B. That is what this line says. If it is not, then we reverse them. Termination condition, the second component is 0. Here it is. And this equals, this is the theorem which is proven, and that is this line of code. And that's it. You can imagine code that is that relates identically to the requirement. And if you can imagine that code, then you simply put your stamp on this user story. You might say implement functional whatever. You would add a couple of sentences about how to implement this exactly, because it might not be you who will implement this. It could be somebody else. And on top of that, it could be you in a 2 months' time and you forgot what you were thinking. So you need to complete the user story so that it uniquely represents the code that will implement it. And when you complete this, do you really need this code? I will remove the procedural implementation. Do you really need this code? No. Why? Because this code is uniquely produced by the user story. You don't have any freedom. Change any letter here and it will not work right. By the way, the procedural implementation, do you know what is the difference between procedural implementation here and functional implementation over there? The difference is that this one might contain a bug and this one might not contain a bug. So if you use expressive models, expressive design techniques, there will be no place for you to put the bug. I mean, the only thing that is doing something in this operation is, I guess, this modular operator. Everything else is just a declaration. And the only way to add a bug into this code is to somehow screw this modular operator. I have no idea how to make a bug here. So use expressive design techniques and you'll be better off. This was the principal idea, which tells you how to prepare user stories while they are being constructed, so that you know for sure that you will be able to implement them. So let's get on to a more complicated example. This is a source code of my website, Coding Helmet, which is my playground. I have started it locally on my machine. Everything is simulated here, the database and queues and storage and everything I use. There is one feature which I wanted to show you, which I should rewrite in the close future. It is about redirects. When I share any links, I'm actually sharing links. I will use Edge for this demonstration. I'm sharing links that go like this, codinghelmet.com, go, and then what? And then I put this design patterns Java, for example. That one. And what happens is that it redirects to, in this case, to Udemy course Java. And it comes with the coupon, and this is why I wanted to show you in Edge, because I'm not, what? Why? No, because I am logged in here. Oh, that was a mistake. Okay, I will copy this link and run it in Edge, and now you will see what it means. Okay, this is the user who is not signed in, and there will be a discount here. That is why I'm using these redirects on my website, so that I can put coupons, discount coupons, into those redirect links without having to change the URL itself, which I'm sharing. So I might put this URL like here, elsewhere, I don't know, refactoring to design patterns. Here it is. I'm not sure whether you see the small letters down there. That is the Go link. If I copy it and get over here, okay, that is the Go link. It will redirect to this course and apply 60% discount, just as I want it. The problem is that these discounts expire quite often, and Udemy is making that period shorter and shorter every couple of months, I see. So I have to visit Udemy site, refresh coupons, get new coupons for all my courses, and place them into these URLs. Here are all the Udemy shortcuts I'm sharing around. So I have to fix 6 URLs every 3 to 4 weeks. And that you can just imagine how mad I am about that. Also, so I want to make that simpler, that process. I want to simplify that process here and to make it less error prone. Second, there are many URLs to Pluralsight. Some of those look very strange. If I click this one, redeem what? I don't know. That happened a couple of years ago, probably. I have no idea what code. This is obviously something that has expired. What else? Free weekend. Okay, free weekend is now over. So I still have those links that have expired. I should be doing something with those. And there are definitely some links that are 404. I found them, yes. These are the 2 links to my SharePoint portal where I was sharing some code for, I don't know, some workshops I held. Well, those are definitely 404 because they have expired in SharePoint portal. So these are the links which were implemented very, I don't know, this is the minimum implementation that works. And it worked for me for many years already, for, I don't know, 10 years. But now I want more. I want some features to be added. I want to track campaigns, because sometimes I start some campaigns over Twitter, over Google. I want to follow those, not me, my marketing department guys who I hate the most, they want to track things. Then I want to be able to update these Udemy coupons more easily. I want to receive asynchronous notifications before those expire. There are no expiry dates here. I want to be warned before, a couple of days before coupons expire, so that I know that I have to refresh them. Things like that. And, okay, good thing about having your own pet site is that you will be your own customer. You will be your own product owner and developer. And so when it comes to Coding Helmet, it's always going to be the way I say it, whether I'm a customer or a product owner or a developer. And I, as the customer, say, I have needs about redirect links. 1. Parameterize redirects. I want them to be parameterized. Where are you? Okay, so I want this to be a parameter. And then coupon. Jose Manuel, yes, there is some API at Udemy which I only glanced over a couple of years ago and I wasn't too happy about it. Maybe they have advanced by now. I think they didn't have coupon issuing automation. They might have it now, so if they do, I would integrate with them. But as of now, I don't know about that feature. And anyway, I need some parameterization so that whatever integration there might be in the future would have to start from something. There must be a difference between this redirect and any other, like these Amazon ones. There must be a difference. So the parameters would be the difference. If I had a parameter named Udemy coupon for this course, then there would be the hook which my software could use to attach to that API and ask for the new coupon. All right, so a developer in me says, oh, there's a shortcut. Let's make, I don't know, $1 here, $1 there, and that might be, yeah, this could be the parameter. And then senior developer in me says, oh, you're crazy. You don't do things like that. Because any programmer should be disgusted to escape anything. Because what if there is a $sign here? Oh, now we have to escape them, to double them something. When you do that, there is also me as the user of my website, and I would have to learn to look for $signs inside the parameters and to escape them, or at least the implementation would have to catch them and escape them, and then to remember to unescape them when it displays on the screen. That is hell. You simply don't do it that way. So when I get to the request again, I, as developer, say, well, this is not going to be done in one go. We need multiple features. And to return to the title of this presentation, I don't see the source code behind this user story. I need to refine this user story all until I can see the code. And when I do see the code, and when that code is uniquely identified, defined by the user story or user stories, then I will simply forget it and keep refining other user stories. And so we come to the drawing table. I know that current implementation is looking like this. There is a table redirects, so this will be the table. It only has two important fields, label and URL. And I need more semantics in this, because this doesn't work anymore. So this is the current state, and I want to move it to a different state where URL is composed of several things. So there will be the label, there will be the label here, okay, and there will be the URL component, let's call it like that, and this one will contain what? This one will contain multiple components, many of them. There will be multiple components, and when you just join them, that will be your URL. But as you probably already know very well about me, I always implement features in at least two steps. One step is to add an ability into source code for something that is coming, like supporting multi-part URLs. That is the first step. And only then I'm implementing that new ability. So I'm first adding a place where multiple components will be defined, but I'm not going to define multiple components. I will just copy existing data into the new model so that the entire software will keep working exactly the same, or at least when looked from the outside, there will be no visible changes in the way software is used, including how it is used to write these things, there will be only a single field for the URL, and that field will turn into a single component stored here. So this star will effectively be one in practice, but it will be one to many in database, but there will be only one row per one URL component row per one redirect row. This is very important, so I hope you are following me. I will augment the model, but I will not use the augmented part of it. I will use it the same as I'm using it before. The same UI will remain there with only one URL field. And so I force my product owner to define the second user story, which says define multiple URL components. And I will explain all this that I said, that there will be only one row per one redirect label and stuff. Everything I said, that will be the definition of done for this. And this one will have requires number 2 to be done. So this will be user story number 1 and number 2. And then, when this is done, change UI to accept multiple URL components or segments. Components, okay. And so in the second step, I'm going to support entering multiple components, but they will be fixed. They will still be, where is that? This one. The UI will populate multiple rows in the component part for one redirect label. And now I remember, there's a problem. At first, okay, there is a step in between this state and this state. That will be the part when there are URLs over here, and they have not been transferred over there yet. So there must be one user story in between, which is to transfer data. Do you know how how I usually do that? I would define a user story which is supporting both models. So that would be number 4. No, number 4 will come here, which says migrate URLs into URL components. And I would explain the process which follows. Load the redirect object from the database using existing code, and then save it back to the database using new code. And new code is inserting the URL part. It's not updating it back into this table, but inserting a row into the new table. That is the concept known in programming as touching the object. It is used very often, for example, to heat up the cache by simply touching everything you think might be used, and that would immediately be transferred to cache. And when the real user comes in, asks for those data, if you were lucky enough to touch the right things in your database, those things will be in the cache. In this example, when you are augmenting the data model, you can simply read and save without changing everything you have in the old table. And that will cause all data to appear in the database in the new format. And after that, when you verify that everything was done in production, you would add the new user story, drop the URL field from the redirect table. And now you move to this state. Okay? That is the that is how you effectively transform the database model, which is more dangerous than changing the object model or functional model, because those exist only in memory. Data exists in a database even when your application is down or not used. And you cannot just change your source code and apply it to production and magically expect it to work. No, you have to augment the database model first and apply that to database so that you have the new DB model in production and the old source code which works well with it. Then you apply the new source code which migrates data. Alternatively, you can migrate data using the script, but it's not always the best idea if you're using an ORM, for example, because then you must be absolutely certain that migration is done right. That is not too hard to do. Okay, so you can script the change, and you must run that script in production so that you know that all the data have been migrated. If it is complicated, then you would write a utility and add it to your application, which uses the domain logic, which uses code to load the data in the old format and save them in the new format. I will give you an example where this is definitely a job for an application, not the script. Migrating users, since user data includes cryptography and seeding and taking server keys and stuff like that, you simply cannot write SQL script which migrates them. It's impossible. And then you would write a utility, add it to your application, which migrates data by saving them in a different place, by re-encrypting everything. And when you are done, you would add a new user story, just like I did, which says, now drop the remainders, the tailing parts of the old DB implementation. All right, so now that we have this, we can say that 2 requires, no, what requires? I'm not sure who requires whom anymore. These 2 require 2, and this one requires that 5 is done. So now you can see, okay, this requires 2 as well. Now you see how we can order these user stories, and I even see some code which will do that, because I know precisely what it means to load and to save an object. That is simple. So I definitely do know how to implement that user story, which was number 4. I know how to implement number 4, so I'm fine. I know how to implement 5, and I definitely do know how to implement 2. Just add a new model, remodel the data contexts and things like that. So that is trivial. I also know how to change the UI to accept multiple parts of the URL, and everything is fine. So we keep going. Next, what was requested? To parameterize redirects. How do we do those? Well, we are here. URL part. URL part is a string right now, is modeled like a string in the URL component, but in fact I want, now these will be classes. These are tables here, and these will be classes. I want to have a class URL component, and it will have a variant which is constant. All existing URL components will be constants. Now I can refine my object model and DB context and everything, the mapping, so that the URL component in the database is actually an abstract class URL component in my code. And the only implementation I have is the constant. And I will ensure that constant writes into that field over there, which I already have in the database. Now, this is something, because the entire database model will remain the same, and I will augment the application model. And as soon as I figure that out, I'm writing the new user story number 6, which says augment URL component to become polymorphic something. Implement turn existing component into a fixed string. Okay, so that is the only implementation right now. Again, I am preparing the ground for the new feature that is only about to come in future, in the next days. I have just supported a transformation in which this field is a constant URL, and now comes the day when I will introduce a parameter, another derived class, a parameter. And that will change the DB model. So this one goes over there. There will be a parameter name, for example, and this one would effectively go in there. And now I have a polymorphic table in a database. So again, I would have to update the database and later to release new code. So the new user story would be number 7. Support parameters as another kind of URL components, plus UI, plus everything. So this should be straightforward. I think that you also can see code which implements this, because this is a routine operation when adding more derived classes to the model. Parameters would require values here, so I might put parameter value here, parameter value. But now I remember, I will remove these because it's obvious who is populating what. But now I remember that some URLs are sharing the same parameter. For example, sometimes I put the root redirect to be the latest course or the most popular course from either Udemy or Pluralsight. And this one might share the same coupon. Okay, here it is. Yes, I'm really redirecting to the same as this one. Yes, that's the same URL, and there should be the same coupon code. And what if I forgot to update both? I would effectively have a bug in data. I want parameters to be strong objects to exist on their own somewhere else. That requires the new user story, which says number 8, turn parameters into strong objects. There should be a parameter object somewhere and a parameter database table. So I will call it redirect parameter, which has a name and which has a value. This value would be edited using some totally different UI page. So I might add that. Yes, I have added that as a user story plus UI. All right. And again, I can imagine writing all that code. There is nothing special in that code. But when I'm over with that, make URL components reference parameters. How do I do that? I have a problem because I have already stored parameters here. And I cannot just ignore the data that are already in the database. So I will call this parameter, okay, let it remain parameter. I will add a new class parameter reference. Okay, parameter reference. It will be another implementation of this class. I have already, unfortunately, used this name, and I have to come up with a new one. Or there is a possibility to use the same parameter name field when this derived class is stored in a table. That's interesting. I never did that. I hope that Entity Framework supports that. I never tried it. Okay. So I might get away with that. Also, I forgot that there must be a discriminator here, which tells which subclass has been stored to the database. Okay, so now we have 3 variants of the URL component, and one is softly referencing to parameter names, to parameters by name. I could even add a foreign key. I might think about that, but that's not something that okay, let's not complicate this presentation with that idea. It could be an idea to think about, to add a foreign key from the parameter reference to an actual parameter, so to ensure that nobody deletes a parameter that is in use. But anyway, are you following this process? So I'm adding a reference plus UI. What would that UI look like? If I had 2 fields with the name and the value of the parameter to store new parameter values in these 2 fields, now I would have a Dropbox. No, Dropbox. No, drop list that points to the redirect parameter that is in a different table. And that's it. So I can change the UI to point to parameters that were defined. And when that is over, I can migrate old parameters so that those, where are you? Those that match the name of an existing strong parameter in this other table. Those that match the name simply reference that one. So I would actually change the discriminator and leave everything the same. And those that don't match any parameter, I would actually create the object here and make that change so that it points to the new parameter in this table. And that is about it. I think I can migrate data with no pain at all. So I have migrate old parameters, and when it's done, use story number 11 is drop old parameters from the system. Since I am now removing the implementation from domain model. So I am removing, where is that one? I will remove this class here. This class will disappear from the model. And this will also disappear. I would remove it. And this parameter name, or if I had a foreign key, would remain the only way to add a parameter. And so this was the request. I could go to that implementation, if you remember. I could just define escapes and get over with that. But that wouldn't help me a lot. For example, if I this is what I would have to do, like design patterns Udemy. That would be the parameter. Okay, this is the actual look of the URL. This doesn't guarantee that there is such a parameter over there. There could be a mistyping here, like this one. And will I notice that or not? Will there be protection from that or not? I don't know. What if I changed parameter over there? Did I check whether somebody is using that parameter or not? Things like that. I'm not sure. Escaping is really not a good idea to parameterize strings. This is much more work, but much more freedom. Let me show you. URLs could contain parameters, and parameters could have expiry time or date, or just a day. And now I could receive push notifications before parameters expire, and that could force me to refresh them. Redirects could have start time, end time. Those are future requirements, so that I can support campaigns which have a fixed interval of time, and I often know in advance. For example, Pluralsight tells authors that there will be a campaign starting, I don't know, on Monday and lasting all week long. So I could come a week in advance and set up a URL, set up a redirect for that campaign, which becomes active at specific time, so that I don't come into that poor situation that somebody clicks the link and ends up on the page which says there is no such discount here. Then I could say, all right, end time, fallback label. What if somebody really clicks on something that is that has expired? I don't want to show that 404, or to actually redirect to the site like Pluralsight or Udemy, and to where the message would be shown there is no such campaign running now. Maybe I want to fall back to default Pluralsight redirect. So if this one has expired, I would pretend like it was some other label and actually resolve into that URL. I can add a lot of features to this model thanks to the model being rich. I don't know, do you have any comments on this? I think if you look at the user stories, I have started from something that looked like, I don't know, 4 hours of work, but it's not. And there will be many issues. Even if I chose to take shortcuts to cut many corners, there would be problems. But as I insisted on seeing every little detail in the implementation of this, I came up with another 10 user stories. And for every single one of these, I actually see the implementation. I know what I should do when I sit by the keyboard and implement it. I know precisely what to do. Do you agree with that? I don't know. This is how I am developing software. Not only at my pet projects, but also in production. I'm always moving in small steps so that every step is using everything that was built before, and I'm augmenting all models so that they are rolling towards the new capabilities that were requested. And once everything is done, would you also value for ordering so your can add? Yes, Jeremy, thank you. I totally forgot that. There should be an order. Yes, definitely there should be an ordinal here. Ordinal. Thank you. So that the URL can be reconstructed. Thank you. So I am applying this technique, this set of techniques, to all code I write, because when I'm adding new capabilities in small chunks, not only that I'm sure that I'm not going to break existing functionality, I'm not going to break the application, but I also see how exactly I'm going to implement all the features that are requested. Plus, these user stories are easy to estimate. They are small. There are no large chunks of work here, so that you can make a mistake like it's not 1 day but 2 days. Well, that is 1 day off. Well, 1 day is a lot if everyone is waiting for a release. All these are measured in hours. And there could be 50 of them. I don't care. I know that I will be able to implement every single one of these requests without any roadblocks, because I have thought of everything. Not I, but the entire team was looking at that. And like Jeremy said, there is an ordinal missing. Yes, people would add suggestions, and you would refine the requirements all until there is nothing left, and you would simply sit by the keyboard and implement it. Okay, I think that was all I wanted to show you in this demonstration. There was really no code this time, but if you try, if you unleash your imagination, you would see a lot of code behind these couple of images. There are tons of code to really implement this in the database layer, in application layer, in the UI. And I'm just about to implement this in the following weeks if I find time. You know that the cobbler's children have no shoes. That's why my website is down right now, and it is lacking a lot of features I'd like to have. Uh, but anyway, I am pretty sure that when I get on to working on these issues I have with the redirects, I'm going to rewatch this presentation and implement them the way I told you here. And I'll tell you one secret. I haven't been preparing for this presentation in advance. I only knew a general thing, parameterized redirects. I didn't think too much about how exactly I will redirect them, besides this part here. I knew that I'm not going to add escaping to URLs. That was a big no. But everything that followed, I really didn't think about that before this talk. It all came so naturally. I was simply solving problems that I'm encountering. And I know that that technique works because there must be a bottom at the end of all requirements when there is nothing more to say about this problem. And when you hit that bottom, that is where you start working, where you start writing code. Of course, there are a couple of lines that could be drawn here. Like you could implement this feature alone and put it into production. Then you could add multiple components, put it into production. You could make polymorphic support parameters. Yes, this one could be the third release. Plus, you might choose not to release that model. Where is it? That I struck in the end, because this turned a dead end. So you might choose not to release that. That would be a branch in your development which you would effectively drop in the end. And production would never see this problem, because when you populate the database with data in this format with parameters in place, then you would have to migrate the data. But if we figured out that that is not the optimal solution to that problem, we could internally in our team implement a better thing and never release that suboptimal one to production. So effectively, this could turn into 3 production releases and everything would work smoothly. There would be really no roadblocks. What do you do when you realized you missed or mistaken a step? Well, there is what does it exactly mean to realize that you have missed or mistaken a step? Does it mean that something is broken, that something stopped working? If you are making small steps, then I don't think that will happen to you. Because there's a long way from this first change to the last one with full parameters and possibly with the integration with, I don't know, Udemy API. It would be, with that integration, that would be probably 5 releases to production. Well, somebody would notice that something is wrong long before you make costly mistakes. So you can always correct those small mistakes as you progress. I'm not the fan of big releases, because that is where you realize that there are big mistakes. I'm a big fan of small releases, small steps, where any mistake you make would actually be way cheaper than it could be if it weren't noticed for another month. So that, I think that is the answer to that question. So if you remember any new questions, wait for a day or two until the recording becomes available and ask them in the comments or use Twitter or anything. Thank you for coming. I hope you have enjoyed this session.